on, guys? Today I figured I'd upload a video kind of showing a little bit of the progress on a map I've been working on. It's been a while since I actually started working on this, but it's been on and off. As you can see, I got a few little assets in here, 3D models that I've imported. Some of them are already in the game. These street lights I've made myself. Trash can I made myself. These I found online. These I also found online right here. Now the curbs, as well as the grass here, and all this over here, are just modular pieces, as well as the sidewalks. Those I made myself. Take care of this guy here. Trees, obviously, from the game itself. Telephone poles, wires, that's also from the game. The traffic lights, however, are a little bit of a mix of someone else's creation as well as my add-on, so it's kind of a mixed situation with the street signs here as well as the stop signs are mine. The textures I've created myself, especially these right here. I'm going to actually work on that. Created that, but I got to work on the vertex lighting of that model. I've been learning a little bit more about the old school way of using vertices in models to create kind of a quick artificial light to shadow effect on 3D models in the game. And it's obviously a lot different than, Unreal Engine 4, Unreal Engine 3. I mean, this technically is Unreal Engine 3, but it's kind of a mix between 3 and 2.5. It's more of a customized version for Killing Floor specifically. But yeah, so I've kind of extended the streets a little bit. I'm going to put more of like little things like this, driveways for the homes and stuff down each street. I'm gonna add more homes once I start working on more of these. They'll obviously be more apparent. I'm gonna make the yards, backyards, things like that, more trees, plants. Right now, as you can see, this thing is optimized like nobody's business. I mean, the frame rate on this is nuts. Easily getting 120, if not more. Also made these right here, textured them myself. And they light properly because I had set up triangulation as well as proper tessellation on the models before importing them. Because if you don't do that, and you don't know where your vertices are as well as the triangulation, they won't map out right with the shadows and light. I was just kind of messing around with a floor plan. I just wanted to show off. Now I made the doors a little bit, they're proper size, but in a small area like this over here, it's kind of hard for a player to get through. So I'm going to redo the home so they're a little bit more wider, things like that. Maybe the doorway is a little bit wider. But this is probably the most realistic scale that you're going to get. The windows, I kind of just experimenting with. They're not really the standard size that I use, but this would kind of be where I would probably place a 3D model or asset. Oh god. And basically you would block out the level, and that term's used as using BSP brushes in certain areas and then making 3D assets. Hold on a second. 3D assets to fill in the spaces, and this is sort of what they've been doing for a long time, but it's the first time I noticed it was in UDK, Unreal Development Kit, and as well as Unreal Engine 4. There was a few tutorials or guides online that kind of showed how you would do it, how you'd go about it, and I thought it was pretty sweet, nice way to do it. Kind of haven't really done that myself. I've kind of just made these assets in 3ds Max, textured them, scaled them, and did everything that I should have for most of them and brought them in. Now see, obviously down here I don't have these really triangulated or tessellated properly, so the shadow doesn't look great. Those are these are a little bit, but I gotta work on them. Same thing with the curbs and probably the signs and things like that. So this way you're getting a better appearance for the shadows, even though it's old school shadows. You know what I mean? Like these right here, BSP brushes. The ground itself, You can see the textures kind of split there. I'm going to rework these textures a little bit better and bring them in. But as long as you know like the size of the models that you have and the unit size, you'll be able to easily texture these with no problem. Let's say you're just making the 2D image of like a square, which is pretty much what I did here, and the rest of it's kind of hidden under here. Like I said, figure out what this is actually the size in game, and then just go into Photoshop and make a similar sized picture or background that you're going to be using. And you could, I use centimeters in Photoshop. It doesn't really matter as long as you have it the same size, the unit size of the model, or in game BSP, you'll be all set to go. So I'm just going to autofill here. And so like I said, also this skybox I did myself, but I'm going to redo the texture because I think I optimized it to the wrong type, so you see a lot of the pixelation, which I kind of think sucks. I want to make this look a little better, but I use this at a website, an HDR website, which would be like a high dynamic range website that does complete panoramas, including the sky. And I used a sky dome to create this. So it's one moment actually. So basically, with sky domes, you're able to use them in Unreal Tournament 2004 and onward, but for like Unreal Tournament 1999 and before that, you couldn't really use anything like that. So you pretty much had to use a sky box, or at least that's what they would call it. Now it's technically still called a sky box, but it's obviously a dome, so it's not really a box. I just want to turn on the HDR bloom because I add a little bit of glow to the lights here. As you can see, and it kind of does the same thing for the moon, as you can see it going past my character. Oh god, trying to do a tutorial here. Whoa. But as you can see, like for instance over here, the shadow isn't going on here properly. That's because that isn't tessellated or triangulated properly. You do have to do that for older, at least from my experience, older game engines, especially Unreal. Oh geez, time to use a grenade. Goodbye. And the best way to just kind of put these levels together is plan ahead. I do a lot of SketchUp. I do a lot of sketches, not SketchUp. I mean, you can use SketchUp and import models from that, but I use like graph paper, things like that. Kind of have my own legend of what each square represents, how much units are in each square, things like that. So you could also do it on computer, it's fine. I also do it on Photoshop. I'll create a grid that will probably be the size of my level, and then kind of each piece that I make for my 3D program to be used in here, I'll fit that in there and move it around. It's sort of like what I would do is if I was to move into a place and I knew the exact measurements and I knew the size of all my furniture and things like that. Let's just say I was crazy enough to do that, and then just kind of move it around in that, and then say, okay, that's how I'm going to do it. So you know exactly your plan of attack. But that's the same thing in this. As you can see, these things aren't really tessellated or textured yet, but they will be. So I figure some of the models in here are already here, so why remodel them? I may just do it anyways for fun, but I just kind of want to get this map together kind of quick as possible and be able to put it out there on the Steam community or whatever website where people might want to play it. And again, I'm going to be fine-tuning a lot of things, so this is nowhere close to being done. Of course, I'm going to also make some versions of the sidewalk here that are more broken and indented and things like that, make it look a lot better. I got to do a lot more ambient occlusion for certain assets, as well as try to maybe do this in like 3ds Max. And if I can get this all together the way I want in 3ds Max, maybe I can just import the whole thing. But I know a lot of people say that's not a good idea to have one big piece brought in, and the only reason I think I'd do that is because what I'd want to do is kind of use ray tracing and render the texture to kind of create ambient occlusion and better shadows instead of just kind of relying on the engine to do it. but again, it's more of a balancing act. So if you have a really big level, you can't really have it one big model unless the thing is optimized to no end. Even then, it's probably still going to crash the game. But if you can get a majority of these models together and then be able to split them up with the textures, then maybe you can do it that way. It's another way to kind of create the effect of better shadows. This guy's still following me around. But if you can see over here real quickly. Oh, jeez. Oh, maybe not. As you can see, it's a little bit more blurry because I had to import a lower texture quality, but you can see a lot of nicks and scratches, at least. Let's see if I can do this here. See it in the back there, stuff down there. This is basically, I did a lot of that in Substance Painter, and I just used, wood textures and things like that I found online, and kind of created a better texture instead of just a bland wooden texture. These textures here are from Killing Floor. These aren't actually mine, but again, you could do things like this in Photoshop and then, make them seamless and fit them onto your assets or whatever the heck you create in here, be it BSPs or actual 3D meshes. The only thing I haven't really figured out yet is how to import animations, for certain models that you'll be using in the game. If there's anybody out there who knows how to do that, please share a link to a tutorial or make one for me. I'd be appreciative. So I'm still trying to figure that out. Still trying to learn a little bit better of how the shaders or materials work in this with layers. That way I can create like water, glass, and things like that. But for the most part, this is what I got. I think I did a pretty good job. I kind of based this off of real suburban areas, real rich neighborhoods. All across the country, but mainly like in places where I've lived, like Illinois and areas like that. However, it was just easier to create more of a straightforward intersection. And what I'm going to do is put a bunch of houses and maybe stores at the end of the streets here. Maybe like a tennis park, skate park, things like that. Kind of make it look good, have it a little bit more unique. You don't want to do too much modular creation in this, as it will just look bland. Oh, for the love of... There we go. But one thing that it took me a while to figure out is how to do something like this. Now I know there's different techniques to make things light up. That's really just because the texture is white, and anything that's pretty pure white is going to have that. So if you made a texture that was white but had a little bit of stains, it may look like that, but not as bright. I know there's a way to kind of maybe take that glow down, because it's separate. It's two separate 3D models together. I had fitted them perfectly in 3ds Max so that the pivots were where they had to be. All I had to do was just, the height of the model off the ground as well was perfect. And then, say, I'll take the light part here and just kind of bog down the glow, which I know you can add to it. But there is the HDR bloom, which is what affects this and I think creates this kind of glow. So it seemed like that's what happened when I turned it on. But there's something I'm just trying to figure out, is how to put lights inside of 3D models yet make it work, with a corona or something. So there must be a way where maybe you take one light and you just make it look like, it has a corona on it in the middle. So maybe you don't have to worry about the glow. And then take a bunch of lights outside of it, like I did here, 4 lights on each one, to light up the ground evenly, and kind of light up the pole, a little bit here, as you can kind of see. Doing stuff like that seems to help with the effect of the lighting. But again, like I said, as you can see the curbs here, if you don't tessellate them properly, they're gonna, or triangulate them. Well, I do both, a little bit of that, and what they'll do is they'll actually create better shadows. And for instance, for the trees and stuff, with the lighting in here, it's kind of primitive, so it's not going to catch a lot of the details you might get in Unreal Engine 3 or UDK or Unreal Engine 4. So again, I had to scale a lot of these. These have their own collision. Usually it's pretty close to what you need. but sometimes you might want to just create your own collision instead of depending on the in-game collision to work. But yeah, so anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I will be working more on this, and we'll see what happens. So, alright, guys, I'll catch you later.